In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 common SAT reading traps that people will fall into and help you figure out how to avoid these so you can get the right answer on test day. So after that, I'll go through 2 problems that cover these traps so you know exactly what to do. Let's go ahead and start. First off, you have to be careful not to overly generalize when trying to decide which answer is correct, especially if you have a main idea passage when they're asking you to answer a particular question. Not instead of asking for the main idea of the passage, they're asking you to talk about characters' personality traits, that type of thing. And the question ends up generalizing to the passage as a whole. Maybe it does talk about that character, but it's too broad. You need it to be more specific. The second trap is being too specific. Again, this is very common for people to fall into if they're in the types of problems that ask you to summarize to find the main idea of a passage, because the answer will pull out a specific detail instead of summarizing the passage as a whole. Again, this is common to fall into if you're trying to create a conclusion for the end of the passage or trying to use data to verify a researcher's hypothesis, because the answer will be too specific for what you're actually trying to find. So this is one reason why it's great to come up with an answer in your own mind before looking at the answer choices to make sure that you're not picking anything that's too specific. The third trap is going outside the text, and this is the one that I see definitely the most. When you see this, it's going to be talking about information that wasn't really covered in the text. Maybe it only goes out slightly, maybe it's not really too far of an expansion on the ideas that were mentioned, but it still goes outside the text. And the SAT doesn't cover that. It doesn't require you to reason unless you're directly asked to do that, to provide a piece of data that would verify or seem to contradict the researcher's hypothesis. You will never have to go outside the passage unless it asks you to do that. So make sure you don't. So now let's go ahead and cover 2 problems that include these traps. The first one really talks about generalizing and going outside the passage, and then the second one really talks about going outside the passage and then a little bit of being too specific. In fact, some of these answers really are multiple traps. They're not just one. And so as I'm going through these problems and solving them, try to figure out exactly which traps each answer is falling under. If it's the one that I labeled, or if it's more, or if you don't think it is the one that I thought. Again, this is all pretty subjective, but these are definitely some patterns that I've noticed in the problems that people will typically get wrong on SAT reading. First, let's read the question and then the passage. Which choice most logically completes the text? Okay. Behavioral ecologists Will Wiggins, Sarah Bounds, and Sean Wilder recently examined the behavior of field-collected and laboratory-reared bold-jumping spiders. They found a positive association between experimental high-protein diets and aggressive behavior in field-collected males, and a similar association between experimental high-lipid diets and aggressive behavior in lab-reared males. Additionally, field-collected spiders showed a preference for flowers manipulated to display ultraviolet fluorescence, whereas lab-reared spiders showed a preference for flowers dyed with red food coloring that was not fluorescent. Wiggins, Bounds, and Wilder therefore concluded that blank. So first important thing to note here is that you've got really 4 things going on here. First, the lab-reared spiders are more aggressive if they have a high lipid diet. The field-collected spiders are more aggressive if they have a high-protein diet. Those are the first 2 things. And then secondly, that field-collected spiders show a preference for ultraviolet flowers, and that lab-reared spiders show a preference for red flowers. So, based on this, they've come to a conclusion. Now let's read the answers and try to make sure we can figure out the right one and avoid those reading traps. Okay, A. Breeding conditions likely affected the responses of bull jumping spiders to experimental stimuli. Well, that honestly sounds a lot like the passage because you're seeing a difference between the two types of spiders and their responses. Like the lab-reared spiders showed no preference for flowers dyed or flowers with fluorescence. They wanted red flowers. And so you can see a difference between lab-reared and the field collected spiders. So I'd say A is our answer, but let's go ahead and move on to the others and decipher those traps. Okay. Being raised in a laboratory setting reduces aggression among male bold jumping spiders. Again, this is outside of the text. This text doesn't mention anything about reducing aggression. It's bringing in information that we simply don't have. So outside the text. Laboratory settings are more suitable for studying bold jumping spiders' diets than their flower preferences. Again, this particular experiment doesn't talk about what is more suitable or not. This is also outside the passage. And then it says experiments involved bold jumping spiders should make use of lab reared individuals. This generalizes it too much. It's not drawing a conclusion from the results of the experiment, but just making an observation that generalizes the entire experiment, not a conclusion itself. So that can't be it. So choice A is right as well. Now, let's go back to a previous problem because only 2 of the traps were found in that problem and try to find the third one here. Which choice most logically completes the text. Even with the widespread adoption of personal computers, many authors still choose to write and revise their novels by hand and only then transcribe the final version on a computer. It may be tempting to speculate about how a novel written this way would be affected if it had been exclusively typed instead, but each novel is a unique entity resulting from a specific set of circumstances. Therefore, okay, so let's read the options. In order to increase their efficiency, authors who currently write their novels largely by hand should instead write only by computer. This is too specific. Yes, it talks about how writers might choose to write by hand versus writing by computer. However, although this also is too specific, it doesn't really draw together and summarize the whole paragraph and create a conclusion. It also goes outside the text because it doesn't say that one is more efficient than another. So yeah, it can't be right. You've got 2 traps in that one answer. B. Authors who do most of their drafting and revising by hand likely have more success than those who work entirely on a computer. While this is far outside the text, doesn't talk about at all which is more successful. So let's take that out. Novels written by hand take less time to produce on average than novels written on a computer do. Again, this is outside the text. D. There is no way to reasonably evaluate how a work would be different if it had been written by other means. This is definitely your answer. Doesn't fall into any of the traps I was mentioning earlier. I hope you found that video helpful. I hope you now understand what 3 of the biggest traps that I see people fall into on SAT reading are, and I hope that it'll help you to avoid them and improve your score. If you found the video helpful, then please like and subscribe. This is a part of my college application process, and you can help me by engaging with my channel and help me pay for college by helping me monetize it. If you have any questions or ideas for future videos, I'd love to hear about it. Again, this channel is really all for you, and I'm just here to help you guys and help you study. So let me know what you need, whether it's SAT related or not. So again, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time.